For my SPED 4000 final project, I chose to do a literacy kit based on this book, 5 Minutes More. And the classroom that I wrote this lesson for was an elementary severe profound class. And the assistive technology I decided to use in my project was a smartboard, a Cheap Talk, a GoTalk 4, and 2 Big Macs, as well as throughout the book I used Boardmaker to make pictures that we'll talk about in just a minute. I started out before reading the book with my students. I was going to go over the front of the book, the cover, and talk about the title, the author, and the illustrator. And once we talked about it, we were going to review, and for my students to interact, I used the Cheap Talk and made these pictures through Boardmaker for them to answer questions when I pointed or asked about what a certain thing was on the cover. And secondly, when reading the book, I made this overlay using Boardmaker on these the GoTalk for each student. One that says Turn the page, so students can interact as we're reading, and they will let me know when it's time to go on. And the next one says
5 minutes more.
5 minutes more, and which is the title of the book, but also throughout the book that line is repeated on each page. And so instead of me reading it myself, when it was time to say that part, it's always followed by but it'll soon be 4:30, and so once students hear that word or that line, they'll know that
5 minutes more.
It would be time to press that. And then the last two, the third one says, please
repeat.
Please repeat. For students to press if they need to hear something again, or whether it be what we're reading or a question. And then at the very end, students will be able to press that button when we are all done with the story. Also, when reading through this book, like I mentioned before, there are pictures of what the main character in this book, Sam, packs in his bag to go to the lake. And so I was going to use these for students to they're velcroed in, so just pull out, and they can put them on their desks for later answering comprehension questions, and to have a hands-on little manipulative. And then after reading the story, I made this PowerPoint, 5 minutes more, and it talks about the author and the illustrator again. And whoops, I skipped one. The first, we would spend a good amount of time talking about the cover of the page and what goes on it, such as the author and the illustrator and the title. And so the first activity would be used for students to draw lines to match the words correctly. So students would match words how they go. In the title, the author is Calvin Irons, and David Pearson is the illustrator. And so that can be used for students as the first activity. And then in the book, on every page, it says the bus stops right outside our door. It comes along at 4:30, and it repeats that on each page. And so this next activity, it says, in the book, the bus came at 4:30. Can you show this time on the clock below? And so this would be tying in our math skills, and we would talk about the clock and refresh everyone's memory. And then we would talk about what it means, like 4:30, where that belongs on the clock, and students would be able to draw out 4:30. Okay, the next activity is loading. And one too far? Okay, this one I used the Vortex. It's was an activity builder on the Smart Notebook program, and this it says things to take to the lake and things not to take to the lake. And so in this book, Sam, the main character, is going to the lake, but then to tie it into like students' lives, we can talk about, I've made a bunch of things, and what you do is you would pick one. So like this says the television, and so students would pick which vortex it belongs into. So the television is something you would not take to the lake. So students can slide that, and if they get the correct answer, it goes into the vortex. But this one says sunglasses, and sunglasses is something you would take to the lake. But if students got the wrong answer, it would spit it back out, and then they would have to try again and put it into the right vortex. And so there are I think there were 10 of those that I made. And then the last activity is going to incorporate, for students that would have a hard time physically interacting with the smartboard, they would be able to use their Go-Talks, which one says?
Yes.
Yes, and the other one says?
No.
No. So students could place these on their trays, or they could, depending on each student, like some students may have them behind their elbows so that they can, if they have poor fine motor skills, they can press back, or some students may have them on their head, whatever would best help them communicate. And so that way all students will be able to participate in this activity. And so in this one, the teacher would press start, and a question comes up. Did Sam ask for 10 minutes more? The answer to this question is no. And so you would find the letters in the little maze thing, but for students that would not be able to physically do that, they could press no on their Big Mac, and then the teacher or the teacher could come up here and she could find the answer. And there's a few questions like, did Sam ask for 5 minutes more? Which he did, and so you would type in yes. And I want to say there are 10 questions that I made in this activity, and all of them have a yes or no answer. So everybody would have a pre-recorded Big Mac saying yes and no, and they would be able to answer these questions. That's it.